one. We are live. Let me just double check, make sure everything's good. So Caleb, let me tell everybody how I met you. Well, I've never really met you before, but how I know of you, and that's through a friend of mine named Holly. And how do you know Holly?
I don't know Holly personally at all. So I posted a comment on Facebook and she commented on it. And then she said she would connect me with her Canadian friend, which happened to be you. And it led to this interview.
Okay, well, I'm Canadian, but I live in the U.S. now, and the topic today is going to be abortion. But to be honest, I avoid politics like the plague on my channel, and but abortion is sort of both, right? It's a political issue and it's also a moral issue and
Yes,
religious
definitely.
a religious issue for many. And so that's why I thought, hey, I'm probably walking into a landmine here by discussing this. But I thought, why not give it a try? And I want to make sure that we are live. I should have, I made one mistake. I didn't reboot my computer before we started, and it's lagging a bit. So I want to make sure everything's working. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and
Okay. Yeah, well, my name's Caleb Murphy, and I'm from the small country of New Zealand, which some of you may have heard of and some of you may not have. But it's just off the coast of America. And I'm in a band called Lost by Design, and I own a company called Lost by Design Records. And yeah, I'm here to talk about the real issues.
so your band career, you play an instrument, you sing, or what do you do?
I sing and play the guitar.
And
About the re-
so are you somewhat famous in New Zealand?
well, yeah, I guess kind of. I wouldn't say famous categorically, but obviously, like, I'm building up our fan base and slowly working towards that. Like, that is the goal, but I wouldn't say I'm famous yet.
Okay. And why are you dressed so nicely today? You're making me look bad.
Well, I am here for a very important interview, so I thought I would dress up to make a good impression.
But it is Sunday in New Zealand, so you dress this way for church, yes?
No, I actually didn't. I actually changed into this for the interview.
You mean
So,
you dress more formally for me than you do for church?
yes, for you and the audience.
Well, that's nice of you. Okay, so the topic is abortion, and New Zealand's having elections soon, right? For my
So we just had the elections.
Oh, it's
Election
over.
night was last night. Yeah, it's over.
Who won?
That's still debatable. So we have a system called MMP, and in that system, the voters decide the largest party, and they vote for their party. But then the parties have to form coalitions together, and so we have not had a coalition formed yet. But both major parties are both talking to this third party to decide who becomes the government. So everybody's like very apprehensive about what's going to happen soon.
Okay, yeah, it sounds a little bit like the Canadian system, or is it a parliamentary type system?
Yeah, it is parliamentary. I
Okay.
think it might be the same system.
So, what's the name of let's say, the right-leaning party, and what's the name of the left-leaning party in New Zealand?
So centre right is National and centre left is Labour.
Labor. Okay. And so you were rooting for the central right, is my guess?
I voted National, yes.
National. Okay. And so when you were discussing abortion on Facebook, what was the main issue for you? That you need to vote for the National Party because they want to make abortion illegal? Is that one of their
No,
platforms?
it wasn't really about what National was going to do. It was more about Labour's stance. So Labour made a very clear stance that they said we're going to allow abortion to full term. And they also said they were going to legalise euthanasia, which both of those two things morally I disagree with. So that triggered me to put a post about it to let my moral stances be known.
Okay. So you're 100% against abortion?
Yes.
in all cases, all circumstances, at all various levels.
Yes, with empathy though, for situations. Like, the reason I'm 100% against it is not because I don't understand why someone would want to have an abortion, but more because I can't, with good conscience, say that I approve the ending of a life.
You can't say in good conscience what?
That I approve for the ending of a life, so for a life to be ended.
Oh. Well, the first thought that came to my mind when you said that was you would be okay with the ending of life in some circumstances, would you not?
Not an abortion, no.
No, but in like, let's say if someone was to come into your house right now and threaten you and whoever else is in there, and if you had the means to end the life, and let's say you had to end the life of another human being to protect your own life, my guess is you're okay with that?
If I had absolutely no choice,
Yeah.
I would do it, but I would regret it very strongly, but I would do what I had to do.
Yeah, like I was raised in a Mennonite culture where I was raised 100% pacifist. So the scenario I just gave you, a lot of my Mennonite friends would say, no, you let the person kill you. You let the person kill your family, because your destination is in heaven, and theirs you don't know. So you're better off dying. But I've since left. Being a Mennonite in Christianity, I no longer hold that view. I actually didn't hold that view for a long time. But
Okay.
I guess the point I was making, it seems like there are cases, in war, self-defense,
Yeah,
that
I believe there are.
that ending a life is not always bad or immoral, or however you want to put it.
I think sometimes you have no choice, but never in those cases is the party of the life which is ended an innocent party. And that's where abortion's different. Because with abortion, that baby has not done anything wrong. Like, that baby did not storm into your house and try to kill your family. That baby literally is being killed just because of convenience. Or if there could be other reasons,
Right.
don't get me wrong, but that baby is not being killed for anything that baby has done wrong.
So you're 100% against abortion because of the innocence of the baby. You use the word baby, and uh, taking the life of an innocent is always wrong.
Yes.
Okay. I love using thought experiments when I give interviews, and this one just popped in my head. If you have a situation where you have a human being, let's say our age, you're a lot younger than I am, who is about to do something that will kill another person, but they don't realize what they're doing. And you could even make it an extreme example where a person is about to do something that would make a school bus go down a ravine and probably kill all the kids in there. And the only way to stop this person is to kill them. But they don't know what they're doing. They're completely innocent. They're totally oblivious. They might even be slow, like, not all there. Would it be okay to take that life in order to save the lives of 50 kids?
So this is a classic case of the ends justifies the means, right?
Yes.
So you're saying that if they are going to do something terrible, then killing them is justified because it means that 50 people will live. I disagree, because I don't think that's your responsibility to look into the future and decide what's going to happen. Like, you are not God. You do not have the power to judge what people are going to do. And so all you can do is take your stance that you believe that you shouldn't kill an innocent life and not kill that life. And then what happens as a result of that, that is the choice of the person who I instigated, whatever happens after that. But you are accountable to yourself.
Yeah, I can understand that. We don't see the future and we can't say with 100% certainty what's going to happen. But I think there's cases where we can at least say that we can predict with a very high degree of probability that something might happen. And if that prediction is like a 95+% chance that many innocent lives are going to be hurt, would it not then be okay to take one life to have a 95% chance to save 50?
Well, we're talking about innocence and a lack of innocence here, right? Because that's a big defining factor. Like, you don't kill an innocent life, but there may be a situation where you have to kill somebody who's out to kill you. But if there's an innocent life, I believe there would be many other ways to go around that. Like, for example, if you knew that a catastrophe was going to happen and there was an innocent person who was going to perpetuate that, then you would take another course of action, such as reasoning with that person or discussing, hey, I see this coming. You can avoid this by doing certain things. I think to immediately go to killing that person, if they're innocent and they don't want to do it, it's never, ever going to be essential.
Okay. So do you want to, actually, when we first started, you were asking me some questions before we went live. And so I forgot to let you know a little bit about myself. I let you know that I'm no longer a Christian. I was a Christian for 30 plus some years. I call myself an agnostic atheist, and all that means is that I don't say there is no God or there can't be one. I basically don't live my life like there is a God. I don't believe there's one. I started doubting in my mid-30s, and by 40 I called myself a deist, and now I call myself an atheist. And I know a lot of people have negative views of atheists and so forth. My wife is a believer. Most of my family are believers. I love believers. I love Christians. And so I have these discussions because it's relevant and it pertains to my everyday life.
Okay, that's great.
And I'm not sure if this chat box is working, so I'm going to turn it off here. Sometimes I can have the live chat go on. But abortion is a really tough one, I think, even for people, believers, non-believers alike. You can be an atheist and be pro-life, or the opposite of pro-choice. I think most people would say they're against abortion. Like, who likes having surgery? Like, very few people would frame it. Very few people would say, yes, I love abortions. Like, I don't think that's the correct way to frame it.
I agree. It is a very difficult issue. Can I say something quickly?
Sure.
Because I know the moment a discussion like this happens between like a male talking about abortion, the first thing comments start saying is, why is this man talking about abortion? It's irrelevant.
Yeah,
so I just want to make it very clear that the reason why it's an important issue for everybody is because it's an important issue for society. It's not like a judging the woman issue at all.
That's a great point, and I appreciate you brought that up. And I can give a personal example where this topic affected me personally. When my wife and I got married, we tried to have kids after 5 years. Didn't happen. And so then we went to doctors and tried to figure out what was going on. And she had a few problems. I had a few problems. Probably because I was a graduate student in chemistry that focused on heavy metals research. And so I probably had enough lead and mercury in my system that my sperm count was really low. So anyhow, we couldn't have kids. And so we had to do in vitro fertilization. So this topic, and now I'm still a Christian at this point, this topic became so real. And it was not so much, the 20-week stage or something like that of a fetus. We're talking about zygotes, blastocysts, and embryos. Well, they're all embryos, but they're very, very early stages. And so my wife and I went through these moral dilemmas of, I'm going to take like 2 minutes to explain what happened. I don't think I've ever done this on camera before. What happened was, my wife and I had a successful in vitro fertilization, and we had a beautiful baby daughter. We wanted one more. We wanted to have 2 kids, and hopefully a boy. And we had the procedure done. We extracted, I think, 15 eggs out of my wife. And since my sperm count was so weak, they actually had to take one individual sperm, take one individual egg, and I forget the name of what they call it, but they basically just physically put them together. Right, they cracked the membrane of the egg. They did that 15 times, and we asked them to only do it 3 times. So they mistakenly fertilized 15 eggs. So now we have 15 embryos, and we specifically said no. We're Christian. We think we're going to use all these embryos, so only do 3. Now we're in a moral dilemma. What do we do with these 15? Because what happened was they implanted 3, and my wife got pregnant, and everything was going great. But now we have 15 embryos in the freezer. And we started thinking, okay, now do we have to go to a lawyer and try to get adoption stuff ready for these other 15? And you can't even see these, like you need a microscope to see these embryos, right? Well, I think they froze them at the 8 cell stage. And we were furious with the doctor. We probably could have taken him to court, but we didn't. And so now we actually decided, at great risk to my wife, it was actually more my wife than me, because to be honest, now that I was a Christian, to be honest, I just wanted the doctor to flush those embryos down the sink. And I said, you know what, God, if you're going to...
Quick solution.
I was prepared as a Christian to say, God, judge me. Go ahead. I don't care. If you want to send me to hell over this, I still believe Jesus Christ died for my sins and rose from the dead. But I do not want to risk my wife having triplets, quadruplets, and going through this procedure 2-3 times. And I was prepared to go to hell for this almost, because of how much I loved my wife and didn't want to put her at risk. And if you know anything about in vitro, twins and triplets happen often, especially when you start putting in like 10 embryos at a time. In fact, most doctors, yeah. So it was a question of human suffering and risk and probabilities. And it became very real. What ended up happening is, and I don't know if the doctor was telling the truth, but we put in 3, so we had about 12 left. Out of the 12 left, the doctor told us that, I forget the exact numbers, but 4 or 5 died on their own, but we couldn't verify that. We didn't know. And so the remaining 7 or 8 or so, we went back and had to go back twice, I think, and put in like 4 at a time. And I remember both my wife and I, as Christians, praying that God would kill them in the uterus. And I'll use the word kill. As a Christian, we didn't use the word kill, just that they would die. But basically that's what we're praying God to do. Because and now looking back on it, Caleb, I'm thinking, this is nuts. This is absolutely insane.
This is a really interesting situation.
It is, but we're talking about 8 cells that you can barely see, and the amount of pain and suffering it just caused us over that 1-year period of, wow, it's just like, it was horrible. Now here's the thing. What would you have done? Would you have done what we did?
I would have let the cells just die on their own, because that may sound heartless, but I believe you have to draw a line. So it can't be like any potential for life has to be safeguarded, because otherwise then you have no contraception, and you just get weird when you start being like, there has to be life if there's any potential for life. And so I believe like the point of life is the heartbeat. So if the embryo has a heartbeat, that's when, in my opinion, it becomes like a living being.
Oh,
and so
this is different. Okay. I'm feeling this is different than what you said earlier, because it doesn't get a heartbeat till I think maybe a month after.
I think it's 3 weeks.
So, but we're talking about 8-celled embryos that are frozen.
Hmm.
Are you saying that you would be okay with throwing them down the sink?
Yeah.
Interesting. And you wouldn't consider that an abortion?
Not personally, no.
Wow. So I'm sensing you're a lot different than a lot of Christians. I'm sure there's some Christians watching here who would say, no, these life begins at conception.
Yep. Some Christians definitely would believe that. I think that you do have to draw a line though, because otherwise you start being like, hey, like as soon as, well, I guess you start saying that any potential for life is life, but you have to actually draw a line and say life does start at a certain point. And so that's where I decided in my belief that life starts at the heartbeat, because that's an obvious sign of life.
Okay.
Now, I could be convinced otherwise. I'm not like dead solid on that, but that is my current belief at the moment.
So if a woman has an abortion before there's a heartbeat, you're okay with that?
Well, normally you don't even find out that you're pregnant. Like I've got a sister who's a midwife, so she talks to me a little bit about this kind of thing. And she said that's almost never the case because women like very rarely find out they're pregnant until maybe 2 or 3 months into it. But in that case, I'm not even sure if I'd call it an abortion if it's before a heartbeat. But I'd take this with a grain of salt because I am not an expert on this. This is a slightly gray area, but that's my opinion.
And why did you choose the heartbeat? And instead of, let's say, neuroactivity in the brain?
Well, because for me, the heartbeat is just a clear and obvious, this is like a life. There's a heart beating here.
Because I can imagine a situation where someone, like a soldier, has had his brain blown out, or most of it, but yet for some strange reason, the blood's still flowing, the heartbeat's still beating. That's still a life in your.
Now, the heart won't beat for long, let's be honest. Like, I understand the theoretic situation, and it's a great point to bring up, but that heart's not going to beat by itself for years. And we're not going to be debating, is that soldier alive or not? Like,
But
that might go for a couple of minutes afterwards or something like that.
But even a brain dead person who has zero chance, or let's say 0.0001% chance of ever coming to, completely brain dead, but the heart's still beating, is that a life?
If they're completely brain dead, I don't believe it is a life.
It is or it isn't?
I don't believe it is. No, if they're completely brain dead, it's not.
So if a fetus in the uterus is completely brain dead, or doesn't even have the brain developed yet, I don't even know the order of, someone can look that up, what develops. My guess is that.
See, I'm pretty sure the heartbeat comes first.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure that's why, like my sister is a midwife, that's her definition of life as well. She's like, the heartbeat is where it starts.
But I would think if the heartbeat comes first, that's tougher in your situation, because here we have a situation where there's a heartbeat, but no brain activity within the fetus, which would be akin to what we're just describing, a brain dead person with a heartbeat. And you said that that wasn't a life, the person who's brain dead. Why would a baby be a person then in the womb?
I see what you're getting at, but let's be honest, like, this is a very close, like, matter of a week or something like that, where you're like, okay, there's a heartbeat, there's not quite brain function, but it's all within something like that. Okay. I don't think this is a massive part of this issue. I think what we have to discuss is whether this is okay morally to have abortions, full stop. I think that's more the issue. Like, we could talk about the details of the finer points exactly when it's life or not. But I don't honestly think any of us know.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question when a human person begins I don't think even science has figured out, I think it's different for different developments, different stages. There's maybe some more would develop more quickly than others. But I guess the reason why I'm kind of pushing on you hard here is because when I asked you the question very early on, are you against all abortions? You said yes. You remember that?
Yes.
But now, after kind of peeling the layers off the onion, it seems like you're only against those abortions after a heartbeat.
Can we get beyond the word abortion for a second?
Okay, killing
So,
of
yeah,
the.
because what I'm more against is I'm against killing a human life. And so, abortion aside, what I'm against is I'm against a baby with a heartbeat dying. And so, before then, like, if it is not a living human being, if it's just like a cell by itself, like, otherwise you'd be like, you can't waste any sperm because that could be a life.
Right.
And that's a ridiculous direction to go in.
Yeah, well,
And so,
a lot
yeah,
of
let's,
a lot of Christians believe, or not a lot, some Christians believe that even masturbating is a sin for that reason,
yeah,
which is just
I think that's going a little bit too far to be like any sperm is a baby, in my opinion.
I'm very curious to hear your take on the legal aspect of abortion, because I think this is even more problematic than, or just as problematic as where we draw the line on where a human person begins. Like what do you think should be done to a woman who has an abortion at, I don't know, after 4 months, in the second trimester or third trimester or first trimester? Does it make a difference? What's your take on that?
Well, if we look at our nation right now, so our nation has laws against abortion right now. That there is a small criteria where a woman is allowed to have an abortion, and that's normally because they are mentally incapable of taking care of the baby, or mentally incapable of going through with the birth. So that's the clause which we have in our law. But anything outside of that is a crime under our law. I have no desire to change that law either way. But what I do have a desire to do is see either our nation back the law up or find a law which is better suited to what they decide. Because currently we do not really enforce this law. Like, we have women who will lie about it and say, I am mentally incapable, when they're not mentally incapable. And the tension with this election is that Labor is saying they want to change the law, so that's no longer necessary. But National is saying we want to keep it the same. And so I'm not going to stand up and say I have a new law and a new idea for this, because that would take a lot more research for me right now. But I do think that if you have a law, then the law has to be enforced or it has to be changed. One of the two. You can't have a law that you don't enforce. That's not good rulership or good governing.
So right now in New Zealand, a woman can have an abortion if her mental cognition is not all there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And what?
So it's more like if she's mentally incapable. I don't think it's necessarily like a mental damage issue. It's more of like whether this woman can handle the stress and the issues of having the abortion. Don't necessarily quote me on that, because I'd have to quote the actual law.
But what
But
about
that's my understanding of it.
what is New Zealand's law on rape, incest, and a 95% chance the woman's going to die if she has the baby?
I'm not 100% sure. I think there is a clause which allows for the woman to have an abortion if they're definitely going to die.
Okay. And are you okay with that?
I don't know if you can know that for certain, that the woman will definitely die.
Well, let's say it's
And
95% plus chance. Like, out of all the people who've had a certain condition, 95% of women die in that same situation. Like I'm thinking like are you married?
No, I'm engaged at the moment.
Like if my wife, going back, and the doctor told me 95% chance she's going to die if she has this baby, that's a no-brainer for me. I'd have green light, go ahead, do the abortion. If God wants to judge me later, he can. As a Christian, that's what I would have answered. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Christians listening right now would answer the exact same way because they love their wives so much. And if God wants to judge them later, they're willing to take that punishment like a man.
I
But
think if it was my wife, I would let her make the decision. So I would ask her, what do you want to do about this? Give her the facts and let her make the decision.
yeah, there was one case in the United States where that actually, no, I better not discuss that because it wasn't a public case. It was more of a Facebook case.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
possibly alternative news.
Well, no, it's actually a situation where I think my wife knows the woman personally, so I'm not going to bring that up. But yeah, as a
Okay.
husband, I would be furious if my wife chose the 95% chance to die, especially if you have kids already. 95% chance they're going to lose their mother, not have them see the wedding and all these things.
Yeah, that's a really hard situation.
But this is, Caleb, to be honest, this is where religion kind of infuriates me because a lot of the times the reasons why people make these decisions is because they don't want God to frown. They don't want to sadden their deity. But there's some real life consequences to these decisions that impact other people, that increase suffering. But no, I'm going to increase suffering on this planet anyhow because I don't want God to be sad with me.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm getting at here?
I get what you're getting at, and I think your perspective is a fairly common perspective. But I think what you said about God being saddened, I think that's possibly a little bit of a misconception. So I believe there's a perception that people have that God's like a dictator, that he's like angry at you if you do something wrong and he's like mad and you better not annoy him. Whereas I don't believe that's true. I believe the Bible makes it very clear that God's actually a God of love and a God who loves his children and loves people. He loved people enough that he came down and he sacrificed his own life for us. That doesn't sound like an angry God to me. And whereas there is an issue of sin and sin's an issue, but like it's not coming from a perspective of I don't want to make God angry. It's more like I love God and I have a relationship with God that is so strong that I want to do his will.
But isn't, from my perspective of being a former Christian, I was kind of taught that it's God's wrath that is the reason why Jesus had to come in the first place. Because God hates sin so much that he had to give a way out.
Yeah, well, the root of it was that there was a sin originally, right? So Adam, the first man, he sinned. And that set humanity on the wrong course where it was going away from God. And then when Jesus came to earth, he corrected that by giving his perfect life so that we could be perfect as well, but not so that God could judge us. Like the whole point of it was that God's judgment was put upon Jesus so that anybody who accepts his gift of salvation can stand perfect before God. Not because of how good we are, not because I'm a perfect man or you're a perfect man, but simply because Jesus already took that. So now we have his perfection. And when God sees us, he sees the perfection of Jesus.
But if you were to like live your life, Caleb, where you're sinning, that doesn't please your God, does it? Like he's not happy with you, is he?
Well, I think God wants you to come to him. He's not like angry. He's like, I want you to come to me and have a relationship with me. Because I believe if you have a relationship with God, you don't want to sin. Like there is no desire in your heart to sin if you are close to God. But if you aren't close to God, then you do sin. And so God is like, he's looking down. He's like, hey, I want that person. I love that person. And I want them to come closer to me. And I want them to have a relationship with me because of all that you're missing out on when you're living in sin. Because you're missing out on God if you're spending all of your time focusing on sin and other issues and not spending your time getting to know God and getting closer to God.
So you believe that once you've become a Christian, all that sin issue is now gone?
I believe that you're still a work in progress as far as what your actual actions are concerned. But the thing is that it's not about your actions anymore. So once you become saved, it's actually about what Jesus did for you. It's not about you trying to do the right things and become a righteous man by yourself, because the Old Testament proved that that's impossible.
I'm just thinking about the verses where it talks about anyone who lives a certain way shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven. So am I hearing you say that as a Christian you cannot live immorally? Like all those who are adulterers or sexually impure, homosexuals cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven. I forget that where that's found, but I would think that if Christians have free will, they could choose those sorts of lifestyles at some point, and then God would say, "No, you're not coming to heaven." Is that how you view it?
That's not quite how I view it.
Okay.
So I view it as being a relationship with God, right? Because that's what being a Christian is all about. It's not about following a set of rules. That's never been what God's about. So if you have a relationship with God and you're very close to Him, take it for example, like say you're in a marriage, okay? So you get married to your wife and you love your wife so much and you have a great relationship, great connection. You're probably not going to go and sleep with another woman because you know she's not going to like that. But mostly you just love her so much you wouldn't do it. It's not about her getting angry. It's more about like, I actually love this person so much, I'm not going to do it.
Gotcha.
And that's how the relationship with God is. That you love God so much and you have such a close relationship with Him that you don't want to sin. You don't want to walk out of His will for your life. And so that comes out of love. It doesn't come out of some sort of fear of hell or fear of, I don't know, God getting mad at you. It's out of love.
Like we're kind of getting off the abortion issue, but I think this,
Yeah, we got sidetracked.
but this is really interesting to me because I think the way our worldview impacts issues like abortion. And so
I think you can view that from a purely secular point of view as well, though, because that is partially a human rights issue.
yeah, I agree. And I actually have encouraged Christians in the past that if you're going to argue in a secular society against abortion, do it on secular grounds. Don't say, no, don't have abortions because God said so. You could try it, but it's probably not going to be effective. But I would really like to. First of all, how much longer can you go? We start at 4:30. Can you go to 5:30?
Yeah, I can go to 5:30.
Okay.
Sure.
I am really curious on why you're a Christian. Would you be willing to go in that direction?
Yes, I would definitely be willing to go in that direction.
Okay, so
I'm a
why?
Christian because I've actually experienced God's presence and I've heard His voice and I know He's real from experience.
Can you give me like 60 seconds of more detail on that? Like, what exactly did you experience?
Well, a lot of it's personal, so I don't want to go fully into detail, but I experienced God's, like, I guess it's hard to explain actually, going from a 100% like, what was that? Like, what is God's presence? But, like, I experienced his presence moving in my life, and I've heard his voice speaking very clearly to my heart.
How did you figure out that what you experienced was actually from God and not either in your own head or because of the context you're in with other believers or so forth? How did you figure out that this is really God and not something else?
I figured that out because I was in the context where I was asking for God to show himself to me. So I was saying, God, can you show yourself to me?
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
then directly after that, suddenly he moves and I feel his presence and I hear his voice. And to me, that's a little bit hard to be like, oh no, it's just random, like, I don't know, breath of wind or somebody talking in the background. Like it was a very clear context. And so because of that, I believe in God.
I,
But there is belief as well involved. Like it's not all just about rational, hey, like I had this experience, I know God's real. There's always going to be a way to talk out of it, but that is what I believe.
so I really appreciate what you just said. There's always a way to talk yourself out of that. Um, like I'm a person who values truth. I really do. I'm the type of guy who does not want to be duped. I don't want to be fooled. If someone knocks on my front door and is trying to sell me something, I'm skeptical. I if someone says this is the best vacuum cleaner ever, the allergies of your family is going to go down if you buy. Don't you love your family? Like you need to buy this vacuum. Like I'm not that type of guy who just believes it. So, and it seems like you're a guy who values truth as well.
Definitely.
It,
I'm interested to know what your definition of truth is.
Truth is all those things learned by reliable methods that should reflect reality, but sometimes it doesn't. There's cases where in history, where we thought something was true and then later found out that it wasn't. Like, I don't know, a couple thousand years, 3,000 years ago, I think most people on the planet thought that the earth was flat. And they said, yeah, it's true. The earth is
Some
flat.
people still do.
And some people still, I've talked to them. So to me, how we get to this thing called truth is very, very important. And so that's why I'm so interested in your experience, because I've talked to people who I think you would say believe something false, like Mormons and Muslims and other belief systems. And they have described experiences as well. And so if they can have, let's even imagine they had something very similar to your experience, and they said, this shows that Allah is true and real, or this shows that Mormonism is true and real. How did you figure out that you're not like those people?
Well, I have yet to meet somebody who has had a very clear experience of another God, but I'd be interested to hear what they have to say. But I believe when it comes down to it, like you can have a lot of self-confidence about something, but you have to make a choice. So you have to choose to believe something that you personally believe is right. And like, I believe your eternity is banking on it. So I think you have to make a decision and you have to believe that. And you may be wrong or you may be right, but you have to follow your beliefs.
What do you mean your eternity is banking on it? Like I'm hearing you say that it sounds like you're saying there's a chance that you could be wrong, but you decided to choose to believe that experience matched this deity anyhow. Is that what I'm hearing? Or are you like 100% convinced that no, my experience is what I think it is?
Okay, so I'm talking from a perspective of the viewer or of you, like looking at this situation. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm 100% sure that I'm right. And I'm 100% sure that my experience is legitimate.
Okay.
But I'm saying it because I know there's no way I can convince you from my experience because that was my experience.
Yeah, and I
Like
get that. Yeah.
you'd have to have the same experience for us to have a real logical conversation about it. But
Yep.
what I'm saying is that I don't believe that you can 100% prove any religion necessarily. But I believe that if you do believe in it, then that is what matters. So, like, for me, I believe in God, and I believe He is the only way, the only truth, and I would encourage everybody else to believe that. But, like, I'm not going to rationally prove to you how God is real, because as far as rationality is concerned, I don't believe that I would be able to do that without you having any doubt whatsoever.
Yeah, and I get totally get that it's not about you trying to convince me in evangelism and so forth that it is a personal experience. It's personal to you. But what I'm curious about is you're a thinking, rational being. You had this experience. How did you connect the dots that, hey, I'm not wrong here. This is true. Because we have cases where someone has experienced in a religion other than your own something amazing and said, yes, my belief is that Vishnu, the Hindu god, answered my prayer, did this amazing experience for me, with me. Therefore, Vishnu, the Hindu god, is real and true. Now, I think you and I are agreed that that is not correct thinking.
Yeah. Well, I agree that that's not true because of my beliefs.
But
So you can
do,
go around in circles with that if you want to, because everybody can be like, oh, yeah, I had this belief and I know it's true. What I would encourage you to do is if you do consider something like that, make sure you do have an experience or have something to back up what you believe. So, for example, if you believe in, say, Allah or the Muslim faith, and you've been taught that all of your life by your parents, and the preconceptions of people around you is what defines your faith, that's not a solid foundation for your faith. Like, you have to actually have experienced it and know it for yourself. And so that's why I believe is because I've experienced it. It's not because of people telling me about it. It's not because of the culture I was brought up in. It's because I experienced it.
does does a belief make something true?
No, I believe a belief is believing in something true.
So someone can believe something with 100% certainty and still be wrong about what they believe.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. And so my question is, how did you figure out you're not that person who is sincere, 100% believes, experienced this amazing thing, yet,
Because I've seen so much tangible evidence as well. So I've seen healings happen. Like I've seen people's legs grow longer than they were before. And I've seen backs that couldn't bend over suddenly move backwards after being prayed for. And so I know the name of Jesus heals people. And I find it hard to refute that. I find it hard to refute that, sorry, because I've seen it with my own eyes and I've heard his voice and I've felt his presence.
so I've actually seen legs grow longer as well. Um, when I was a Christian, a guy came into church and he sat in a chair, and the guy had back problems, and he prayed in the name of Jesus, and they had the zoom in camera, and the leg grew, and I was very skeptical, and so me and my cousin Leon, we kind of figured it out just on our own how he did it, and get this, this is a funny story. The guy who did the healing came to a restaurant after the service. My cousin and I were demonstrating for people at the same restaurant that he came into how he did it. And he walks right by our table, and we kind of like look up at him and, oh, hi. And we were kind of sheepish. But I guess my question is if those,
Wait, did he tell you that it was fake?
oh, he actually got very defensive. No, he would never say it was fake because this is his livelihood. But I could do that. I could grow somebody's legs without using any God, any. It's if you stick out your feet right now, and just the way a slight shift in your spine will cause your one leg to be slightly, and then oftentimes you'll have someone behind the person holding their hands on their shoulders while they're praying, and just by shifting the shoulders, you can make the leg grow. But the point,
Okay, so you're a skeptic. I get it.
but the point I'm trying to make is I want to dive deep into this because you're describing all these amazing things, and let's say we were to pick three of them, and I'm not asking us to do that now, but if we were to pick three of these amazing experiences, and someone said, "I can explain this for you, what was happening here." On completely naturalistic terms, complete biology, complete science, here's the explanation. Would that lower your confidence at all that maybe what you experienced wasn't what you thought it was?
If signs and wonders that I've seen, like healings, for example, was just proven, I would be very unhappy with what had happened, and it would make me doubt my faith in the people who did it. 100%, it would not make me doubt my faith in God.
Okay. And I appreciate that answer. But when you say that to me, I'm just being honest with you here, Caleb. When I hear that, that tells me that you are believing for some other reason, not the healings, not these miracles.
Yeah, that's just an extra thing. Like, that's not why.
So
Like, the
what
reason I
is
believe in God
what
is
is the
because of my
why?
relationship with God. Because I've heard his voice, because I've spoken to him, he's spoken to me, and I know he's real.
When you say you've heard his voice, do you mean like audibly?
No,
Or
not all the way.
just okay, so with your inner voice, you've heard an inner voice.
Yeah, more like a strong, like, voice from your heart kind of thing. This is why I bring out that there's no rational way for me to convince you of this, is because anything that I say about this could be interpreted in any other way. And
Well,
I actually think God made it like that because he made it so there could be a doubt and so that your belief would be the thing which defines the relationship between you and him.
so do you doubt now?
No, not at all.
I guess if getting back to truth, does it cause you to doubt when you see other people who say, I have heard the voice of a God talking to me, and, excuse me, and, yeah, there's God calling.
Yeah, oh snap, better pick that up. There's all my proof right there.
Caleb, I want to make this as real as possible, but as sincere and honest as possible. If there was a person sitting here right now who was not a Christian, not a Jew, and said to us, I have heard God speak to me, but it's not the God you worship, what would immediately go through your mind?
I would immediately wonder who's speaking to him.
And what conclusions would you come up with?
Well, I would either conclude that maybe it is God speaking to him, he just doesn't know it yet, or maybe it's some other spirit speaking to him. Like, because, okay, so I believe in the supernatural realm. So there's like God and there's the devil, and it could be something other than God. Like, I don't think you can believe in the existence of God and not believe in other supernatural beings, such as like demons and the devil. And I hate to get into that because I know it makes you sound like you've got these weird beliefs. But that's the truth of the supernatural realm, is there is God and there is the other side. And so that would make me wonder. I would be like, this may be God speaking to him, he may not realize it, or this may be something else.
Okay, I like that answer. So this person who thinks a God talked to him, but it's not your God, could be your God talking to him, and he just misinterpreted it, or
There
could.
have been there have been many stories about Muslims or people of other faiths having God show up to them and having Jesus show himself and speak to them
Okay.
and them suddenly be like, what is this? This is crazy. Like, I don't believe in Jesus.
Can you think of any other explanations of why someone might hear voices in their head?
Somebody could be crazy. Like, let's just flat out say it. Like, there could be a crazy person who hears a voice in their head. And it's like, hey, this is God. But it's not really God.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Okay. So someone could be mentally ill. Someone could just be hearing a different God and thinking it's that God when really it's that God. Could be a spirit or a demon. Um, is there a maybe another explanation that's not so extreme?
But all of the options which have run through my head.
Like one of the options, we all have inner voices, like that we speak to ourselves. Like I just said the word pizza in my head because I'm getting a little hungry.
Yeah.
And I heard myself say the word pizza, but nobody else heard it. How do you sort of separate? How do you tell the difference between your inner voice and a voice who you think is from a God?
Well, I know the difference because I feel his presence when he speaks. So to put that in like a really physical term, it's like a really strong like heat and warmth. And it's like unmistakable. And then I hear his voice and I know that's God. And it's not me just thinking it up.
Do you think you would have felt that same heat in your chest area if you were raised differently? Like, let's say you had no exposure to Christianity whatsoever, and you were just walking down the street and you sense this heat and you're hearing your inner voice say something. Would you immediately conclude, oh, this is Jesus talking to me?
That's completely theoretical. I have no idea what I conclude.
Well, yeah, my guess is you
In a
would.
different life with a different, yeah, with different background, I'm not sure. Maybe I would. Maybe I wouldn't. It's way too hypothetical for me to say for sure.
Well, I guess I'm giving you an explanation to consider that maybe the culture you were raised in, that I was raised in, the environment that we're in, social pressure. I'm not saying this is the case for you, but in a lot of cases, people have these warm feelings in their chest area when they're in a worship service or in a church function.
Could be
And
just the air conditioning being a little high.
yeah,
Who knows?
and you see this in a lot of other religions as well. It seems like if you were removed from those situations, would you still get those same feelings? Or maybe you get that warm feeling in your chest when you're watching your favorite football game. I don't know.
I know for sure that I would never have that feeling. I've never had that feeling in any other context. 100%. But I can see this is a very, very difficult conversation to have when you're talking about something which two different people have not felt the same thing. Like
Well,
we could talk about a rugby game and be like, hey, yeah, this rugby game is great because we both saw it. But with this kind of thing, it's not really something which is possible to prove or articulate.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. And like I said, I was a Christian for 30 years and I had some pretty bizarre experiences as well. And it seems like if I look back on my life, I'm 46 years old now. And when I look back, most of those experiences happened between the ages of 18 and 22. And if you talk to a lot of Christians over the course of your life, which I have, you see a pattern. You see between those ages, those are the ages where you're really trying to figure out what's true, what's not, what you want to believe, what you don't want to believe, becoming a man, becoming a woman. You got hormones raging, often you're sleep deprived, you got the pressures of school, the pressures of life. Everything's against you. and And I think it's no coincidence that these types of experiences occur during those ages. And it's amazing. In fact, I ask a favor of you: talk around to some really strong Christians who you deem as strong, but who are older, and ask them about these types of experiences. And I hypothesize that they're going to have one on the top of their head that they're going to describe in detail, and then ask them at what age did that happen. And I'm like 70% confident they're going to say between the ages of 18 and 22. And if you do this, let me know if I'm right. I love to. And
I hate to disprove you, but I have done this already.
oh yeah,
And I know for sure, like older people in their 50s and their 40s, a lot of them would be like, hey, last week, like I experienced the Holy Spirit, or 2 weeks ago, I had healing, or something like that. Like, I know for sure it's not like some sort of weird growth thing, because otherwise they would not have those experiences.
yeah. And I'm
It's an
not.
interesting theory, though.
Yeah, and I'm not saying all or nothing. Like there's definitely, I'm sure people who have these experiences later in life, but the majority of them happen when under those types of situations that happen between 18 and 22. But
I kind of see what you're getting at, because I do think that a lot of your major decisions are made around that age. So you do make a lot of your major life decisions around that age.
yeah,
But I'm not sure that you could equate that with having your major experiences.
like I
I think that would
remember,
be a little bit narrow.
like I'll share before we wrap it up, I'll share a personal experience that I had when I was, I think, 19. I was lying in my bed one night. I was not sleeping. I was fully awake. And I just felt a presence come upon me. But it wasn't a good presence. It was an evil presence I felt at the time. I felt like Satan had pinned me and I couldn't move my limbs. And so I just kept praying, probably what you would pray. In Jesus' name, I command the spirit of the devil or whatever to leave me, go away. And I prayed that for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and it did. And now looking back on that, I can see that, hey, I was sleep deprived. This was like before exams. I probably was going through some type of sleep paralysis, which you can be awake for. And so if we're valuers of truth, we can conclude, yes, this was Satan pinning Doug to the bed. Or maybe it's something else that, like sleep paralysis.
I 100% believe that some manifestations are not true. Like, I agree with you. There are some fakers out there. There are some people that see little red alarm lights and stuff thinking it's the devil. Like, no way would I say 100% of spiritual encounters are spiritual and legitimate. Because a
Okay.
lot of them aren't.
Okay, that's great. So is it testable then to figure out which ones are true and which ones aren't?
I think it comes from the fruit of it, I think. So I think like you can tell by what that experience brings. This is within a spiritual context, so I'm not sure if it will make sense. But I'm saying like if you see a manifestation in somebody's life and then you see like good fruit come out of that, like say, I don't know, somebody gets healed or somebody gets saved or something like that, that's how I judge it. So I'll be like, okay, that was genuine because this fruit's coming out of that. And if like bad fruit's coming out of it, people are like freaking out and getting weird just because of this manifestation, or they're sinning, or like, yeah, like just having bad fruit, then I would say it's not a genuine manifestation. That's my judge for it. I know there's probably a lot of things which you would like to go on to talking about from hearing that. But yeah, that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of things I would want to ask about because, you could say there's good fruit in other religions as well that you would deem as false religions. So, yeah, like the main thing, the reason why I'm kind of asking these questions, and I apologize if you felt like you're in the hot seat, but
No, it's fine. That's why I came here.
but I do value truth. I do think that if we kind of work together and try to figure out, okay, what is a reliable way of coming to knowledge. And you asked a great question earlier. You asked, Doug, what's truth? And I answered that it's all those things learned by reliable methods. And if experiences are not reliable, like you've admitted to me that some are not true. I mean, some of the experiences are not real. I mean, they're not what the experiences are real, but they're not what people think they are. And so
Some of them.
Yeah, some of them. So
Keyword some.
So if we can't tell the difference between the some of them that are real and some of them that are not, as far as the attribution, we're in a pickle here of this thing called truth. And maybe most of them aren't. Maybe none of them are real as far as this deity impacting. Maybe there are no spirits at all. Zero, zip, nada. How do we figure out whether this is true or not? And so, yeah, that's why I'm asking these types of questions.
Okay. No, I fully understand where you're coming from. And I like having discussions like this. I probably am going to have to wind this up, though.
Yes.
It is 1:30 and it's been an hour. But it's been great being on this YouTube channel. And I appreciate your time for interviewing me. And I hope everybody in the audience got something out of this. And if you didn't like it, I'm sorry. It's unfortunate. If you did like it, that's great.
No,
and I'm just glad you guys were watching.
Caleb, you came across as a very likable guy, very sincere and honest, I think. So, yeah, and I appreciate you coming on and sort of taking these tough questions.
I think the thing I want to stress is the pro-life thing. Like, that was the incentive behind this interview. And as much as there was a lot which we went into after that, I'd rather leave you with the pro-life. Just let's stand for life in our community and let's stand for life in our nation and our government. Because if people don't talk about it, then little things like that just slip under the radar.
Okay, thanks, Caleb. I know you got to run. Take care.
Very much.
Bye. Okay, thank you everyone for hanging out on a Saturday afternoon, Sunday in New Zealand. And we will see you next time. Yeah, I know I'm still live, guys. That was fun.